BetMGM game of the week, Miami at Florida State. Rivalry action. Miami. This game opened, I believe, at 5.5, favoring the Canes over at BetMGM. It is now down to 4.5, 7:30 Eastern, ABC, Doak Campbell Stadium. If you're Miami, this is a chance to win the state now. Think about it. Beat Florida already. You beat USF for good measure. And if you beat Florida State, think about the feather in your cap that is on the recruiting trail if you're Mario Cristobal. As if the Canes needed any other extra ammo to work with on the trail for a one Mario Cristobal. Think about what that would mean for them. I think it's a nice pitch to make in any given living room. It should be noted, first road show for this version of the Canes. Carson Beck, new starting quarterback, obviously, but he hasn't been on the road with this group just yet. Bunch of young bucks on the perimeter. I'm just saying, we'll see what they look like. For Florida State, this is a spot you didn't really foresee yourself in after you beat Alabama. I think we all just assumed, okay, Florida State, they're going to run the table. They'll be playing Miami at home, undefeated. College game day will be there. It'll be great. Not the case. I say everyone. We kept circling that Virginia game and said, hey, just let's pump the brakes a little bit here. Let's see what they are when they go to Charlottesville on a Friday night. Now, for full transparency, did not predict Florida State to lose that game. Just was curious what we would get from them. So you lose that game, and as much as that sucks if you're a Florida State fan to now have a loss on the resume, I think that this version of Florida State, with a loss the week before, kind of refocuses them, and you would like to think maybe regenerates any sense of urgency that could have potentially been lost by being undefeated. I don't know. I think this version of Florida State is more dangerous than if you had won in overtime against Virginia. I digress. Miami offensively, man, the task for them at hand here is everyone just be cool. Everyone be cool here, because what I said a second ago, this is going to be the most difficult spot that this offense has been in to this point in the year. And Carson Beck, you're the adult here, brother. Act like it. We need you to be poised. We can't have any situations now where you get a little bit greedy, try to force the ball in some tight windows, and we have our eyes get a little bit bigger than our stomach offensively. I need you to just take what the defense gives you. I need you to hit the checkdowns. I need us to all just be cool, okay? Because if you try to get a little bit too aggressive, you try to, I don't know, make something happen early because it's a rivalry game and you got adrenaline and you're in your home state, obviously playing against Florida State. I mean, obviously you're in Florida any given weekend if you're playing for Miami. I digress. The point I'm trying to make here is if Miami gets ahead of their skis and they get too aggressive offensively and they try to create explosives that aren't there, this Florida State defense plays downhill. They play with aggression. Tony White, the way he calls that defense, it is risk it for the biscuit. Okay, so they're going to, very early on, I think, try to rattle a one Carson Beck. You gotta withstand that storm early if you're Carson Beck and this Miami offense. A thing that would help you do that now, pound the freaking rock. That's who you want to be anyway, right? Mario Cristobal is your head coach, former offensive lineman himself. I understand Shannon Dawson, the OC, from the air raid family tree when it comes to how he calls it, but they have done a phenomenal job blending that air raid philosophy with real deal punch you in the mouth kind of attitude on the offensive side, okay? So watch what they do when it comes to the condensed formations when Miami's on the offensive side of the ball. When I say condensed formations, all that means is they line those receivers up real tight to the line of scrimmage. They'll play with an extra tight end out there at times. What Miami does when they line up with those condensed formations, obviously it creates some ideal spacing in the passing game at times. It gives you a lot of field to work with if you're a Malachi Toney or a CJ Daniels. What I think Miami's doing when they line up in condensed formations is just tell you very clearly, we think we're more physical than you, therefore we don't need to spread it out. We're going to go right at you. We're playing downhill. We're giving it to Mark Fletcher. We're giving it to Brown. Like, we feel more than fine imposing our will on you when we line up real tight and just go straight forward. Saw it happen multiple times against Florida. Several attitude drives at the end of that thing where it was like, no, Miami's just tougher. And the thing is, too, they've built for a minute here on the recruiting trail and via the portal to be the more physical, more tough team on any given Saturday. Is that the case in this spot? Remains to be seen. But if you want to mellow out a defense that's aggressive, condensed formations, pound the rock, all that would help you out in a massive way if you're Miami. Now, for Florida State on the defensive side, you got to answer the bell here, man. I just said the condensed formations for Miami, they'll line up with two backs a good amount and attack the perimeter when they run the football. as big a story as it is going to be in this game for defending the pass and lining up with Tony and all those different pass catchers they have at Miami and getting after Carson Beck, all those things are true. I think this game will come down to if Florida State's able to meet that level of physicality that Miami is going to throw down in this spot here. Okay, now for Florida State, I think it won't just be a thing where you got to win on the interior. You got to win on the perimeter because there's going to be several moments where it's whether it's an extended version of your run game where it's like the quick passing game on the perimeter and it's a screen game or whatever, there's going to be several moments where that Florida State defense, especially on the third level, will have to rally up, be sure in space, make good tackles, and again, most importantly, attack the perimeter when it comes to what you're doing against those blockers from the position group of the receiver room from Miami. Can you fill up with violence in those spots and go create some negative plays, or at least short gains when it comes to how Miami's going to attack you on the perimeter? Now, if I'm Tony White, especially early here, I am going to do everything in my power to rattle Carson Beck. You're saying, JD, no duh. That's what every defensive coordinator wants to do. But especially Tony White, with how they draw it up, they look to be a little bit exotic with their pressures and things of that nature. They go with the three true down linemen that have an edge rusher off the edge there as well to try and be a little bit more dynamic and a little bit extra degree of speed on that defense. If you can rattle Carson Beck early, you can rattle the entire Miami operation. Okay, because if you can get Carson Beck to create that early turnover and then you get a spot where it goes back to Castellanos and you can kind of take their ear out of the football and limit their possessions overall on the Miami side, that would be a massive, massive advantage for Florida State in this spot. Because what you want to avoid is Carson Beck hits a big one early, he gets the confidence, and then you're playing catch-up and Miami can just run the football. That's not a world you want to live in. Rattle the pilot, rattle the plane is how I'm approaching this thing if I'm Tony White. Now, on the offensive side for Florida State, make it your game. Tell you one thing I'm doing if I'm Gus Malzahn. I'm not letting Ruben Bain wreck shop. I am reading him all day long. Because guess what? You got to block Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain, probably not going to be a great situation for you to live in. But if we can just make it a thing where Ruben Bain, we're leaving you unblocked and we're going to just read you all day long, cool. We don't have to worry about blocking you. We'll just scheme around you. And so if that's the world you live in, you limit the game-wrecking potential of Miami's best defensive player. Other thing I'm doing here from Gus Malzahn, I'm using Miami's aggressive defensive flow against them. Because Miami, you watch them on tape, they are violent, dude. They get downhill. They look to create negative plays. They play with high energy. You got guys doing the Ray Lewis dance in the backfield when they get a big play. Like, all those things are phenomenal. That's Miami defense. That's what I think you expect from a Miami defense when it comes to what that logo has been and what that tradition is on the defensive side of the football. However, you want to be aggressive, be my guest. We'll go play action. We'll hit squirrel wide over the top. Deuce Robinson over the top. And so as much as it's important to set those up, you got to go capitalize too. Like Deuce Robinson, we need you here, brother. One-on-ones against a secondary from Miami put together via the portal. We need you to go in and be the difference. I think when you talk about the matchup for Florida State and Miami at the skill players, I think Miami, the test they got against Notre Dame was a good one relative to the overall talent level, but like this test versus that test, I think are two very different things. I think Florida State, skill player-wise, pound for pound, will provide a greater challenge for Miami in this spot. Because remember that game, it's rainy, so you kind of have a slow track to begin with, but also like CJ Carr's first ever start for Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love and his number of touches were limited. I think the dynamic nature of Thomas Castellanos, of Usman Kroma, of all the players in the perimeter for Florida State, this to me is where Florida State can go win the game. Get the explosives. All right, so Miami defensively, two things. No hero ball on the back end. Got to have some self-control. I know you're going to want to trigger on the screen game they've shown you 3 or 4 times in the first half, but I promise you, Gus Malzahn has a screen and go in the bag there, and they will hit you for an explosive, and that's a bad way to live. Other thing, I need us to attack some blockers and just create messy pictures in the run game, because so much of what Gus Malzahn does offensively is predicated on the quarterback making decisions in the option game and the RPO game and all those things. Just playing with a certain level of downhill violence, controlled now again, but downhill violence and attacking those mesh points. We saw Virginia do this at a high level. When you muddy the picture for Thomas Castellanos, when I say muddy the picture, like creating carnage. We're rushing right at the mesh point as opposed to giving a definitive look of we're going to have them a give or a go, whatever it is. When you do that, it creates a little bit of indecision at best. At worst, you just muddy up the running lanes. And when that happens, you might get got for 3 or 4 yards. Guess what? You're not getting got for 30 or 40 yards. That's a big thing for Miami here. Don't allow the explosives in the run game. Don't allow the head game to get going with Thomas Castellanos where you're trying to attack the mesh point and then he gets out on the out the back door because you've been tired of getting got by the inside zone look, like all those things. If you can just be disciplined with the violence, getting downhill, but also make sure you're muddying up the picture, good things will happen for Miami on the defensive side. So let me be very clear. There is a version of Florida State that we've seen this year against Alabama that can win this game. When they're creative, and just what I said, they have your number defensively because you're tired of getting got on the perimeter. They got to reverse the back way around, or you're tired of attacking the mesh point and Thomas Castellanos getting out around you and they just get you up and under on the inside zone stuff. Like there's a world now where Florida State dictates terms to you with the flow of your defense and you get got and you lose the game. It's happened before. I've seen it happen to Bama, and Bama just beat Georgia this past weekend. So that win is aging pretty well. But I go back to this thought whenever we pick games, like, okay, what do I trust? Who do I trust in this spot? What I trust is the line of scrimmage of Miami. I think that even if Carson Beck takes a second here to get going, even if he has a turnover in the first half and you're like, hey, what's going on with the Miami pass game? I trust that the violence of Miami up front is enough to win a game if it gets ugly. I also trust if it's a game in the fourth quarter and we go down to, which quarterback is going to make the play, I trust the 6-year guy in Carson Beck. So with that being said, I'll take Miami to win. I'll take Miami to cover. I think it's close throughout the entirety, but I think Miami makes a couple plays late to get it done. Has a very much so feel of like that final drive that Miami had against Florida, where, again, they just kind of snatched the soul. I think that's kind of a situation we see here from the Miami run game. Final score, Miami 27, Florida State 21. So, again, Canes win and Canes cover.